You are listening to Rouge Radio, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's time to get the point as Rouge Radio is ready to kick off.
Ready!
The best football talk with the best in the business.
So what is the cost? You have 2 first-round picks this year because the Argos are dumb enough to trade for Drew Willie.
A few rookies.
We go directly to the on-field product. We welcome to the show the 20th overall pick in this past Sunday's CFL draft, DeAndre Wright of the Alouettes. DeAndre, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
And the occasional Hall of Famer.
Please welcome Doug Brown, who is one of the members of the current class of 2016 in the CFL Hall of Fame. Doug, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you guys for the kind words and for having me on the program.
Rouge Radio is on the air. Here's your hosts, Robert Dalton and Tony Allen.
And me, yeah. I came for a...
I suppose you want another turkey.
Yes, that's exactly what I want, a turkey. I didn't come for anything.
Okay, fine. You wore me down. Damn it. Things are not going great with Tony. Haven't been going great with Tony for a long time. You know, Tony's hot, but maybe it's time for me to just settle.
No. Look at me. I'm nothing. You love Tony. Stay with Tony.
I'm so sick of Tony and his dancing.
No. I don't know Tony, but I assume it's great.
Not great with
You
Tony.
should definitely stay with Tony.
No. Yeah, I'm taking my break. Oh, my God, we're doing this.
No.
COVID-19 may take our season, but it will not take our podcast. We're coming back. It's episode 405. It's the Rouge Radio podcast, powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. I am here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Myself is Robert Dalton, and joining me, my brother from another mother in Medicine Hat, Alberta, Mr. Tony Allen. Tony, how are you doing?
I'm getting by. The COVID kind of did take our podcast, but we'll make an attempt to do something valuable anyways.
Well, I was kind of like, did they really? I mean, we're back. So technically, in a technical sense, they didn't take our podcast. But when they take your season, and when you're used to running weekly podcasts, we should be on episode 430 by at this point. Like, this is post Grey Cup. We've got a great show. We're going to run through TSN's, or I guess CFL's all-decade team. Just talking about the TSN's, I guess, the best Grey Cup team, because there's a lot of controversy around that. And, of course, we're going to answer your tweets and emails. But first, I mean, we haven't done a show since, what, May? Was it April, somewhere around there?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. I think I don't even know if we tried to start our 9 teams in 9 weeks, to be honest with you.
It was like back and forth. We're like, should we do a show? Should we at least plan it? And I'm like, it's not going to happen. Like, I hate planning for the sake of knowing, or for the sake of planning, knowing full well that nothing was going to happen. And I'm the most probably optimistic person I know, but the idea of planning 9 guests only to tell them, sorry, we're not doing the show,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just like, credit to where credit's due for Randy Ambrosie. He held on to like the last minute, and I think like the end of August, he finally pulled the plug on the 2020 season, and was like, we're gonna aim to go for 2021. And at that point, it was like kind of, I think they were looking at Winnipeg being the bubble city for all the CFL teams, and then we allowed everybody in the province because our numbers were so good. Now we're like the worst in Canada right now. It's like how fast can COVID kick your ass? We're like sitting at 1 active case in July. 1 active case. Now we've got like 7,000. And that's in 5 months. 5 months we've got 7,000 cases. Now it's not as bad. I mean, per capita it's bad, but it's not as bad when you look at provinces like Alberta and Ontario. But this isn't a one-upmanship in the COVID game, but it just goes to show how things could change. And we're glad because we wanted to do this podcast for a while now, and obviously family stuff gets in the way, and I think Tony's just dying of boredom, so he says, "Hey, want to do a podcast?" And it's like, I'm joking. It was me that reached out to him because I've been dying of boredom too, but.
And it's like with and everything on social media is political now because there is no sports. So this will be a nice reprieve from that. Because even my Twitter, I may have had 4 political tweets since joining Twitter 10 years ago, because I've been you can't help it. It's just everything's bombarded with the U.S. election and COVID, and especially Alberta is just not doing great right now as far as COVID numbers. So it is nice to at least do this show and be able to talk about something else, even if we've got to talk about old players, old games, old teams, or whatever it is.
Yeah, go to Tony's Twitter profile. You can get him tweeting about the return of Blasty and Matthew Tkachuk and how Milan Lucic might ruin that.
Oh, I hate Milan. Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on how much I hate Milan Lucic and how sad Flames fans are that they continue to have to convince themselves we won that James Neal trade just so they could live another day as a hockey fan, and not having to accept that it doesn't matter that Neal was horrible. We got Milan Lucic. It doesn't. All right, I'm already off on a side here because I hate Milan. But that's just one thing. It's like, oh, would you rather have James Neal? I would rather have anything than Milan Lucic. It's not about who we sent to Edmonton. It's the fact that we went out and got Milan Lucic on purpose. No level of justification or what James Neal did here can justify getting Milan Lucic and then putting him on the ice.
I've been listening to old podcasts, and I remember, I think somewhere in July I caught a 2016 podcast, and we started talking about NHL free agency, and that was the time when Milan Lucic signed with Edmonton, and I remember seeing Twitter, and Flames fans were just blasting Edmonton because he didn't even wait. I think he signed within the first hour of free agency opening, where he only gave Edmonton permit or something. It was something crazy where Edmonton was the only team that really talked to him, and he still signed, and Edmonton still signed him for that amount. And Flames fans are going off on him, and then they traded for him, and it's like the mental gymnastics for some of you guys out there, trying to validate that trade, but you know. Our coach in Winnipeg is Paul Murray, so I'm not going to talk anything further about NHL. So, anyway.
There you go.
So you had some personal issues that I think we talked about on through text. I don't know how much you wanted to go in through, but your youngest second youngest is went to the hospital.
Yeah, the middle child. Now I have the wonderful distinction of being able to say that every one of my children have ended up in the emergency room, but we sent them out on Sunday evening to play in the backyard just to blow off some steam. And I'll admit, my daughter can be a little bit dramatic, and she's been known to cry wolf a few times. So we saw her laying in the backyard and crying for help. It's like, okay, what's going on? And I love my daughter, but it is difficult, and I'm sure there's parents. There's probably people without kids saying, you're a goddamn monster. I'm like, no, wait till you have kids and you'll see what kids can do to waver your belief in whether or not they're injured. But yeah, she was like, even the boys were like, they just walked away because it's her and that's what she does. But, we got her inside and it started going on a couple hours. I'm like, okay, she usually doesn't milk it this long. So it's like, let's take her to emergency. And I mean, it didn't show any kind of breaks or anything in the arm, but they did put a sling on her with a half molded cast that goes up the back of her arm and locks it in a 90-degree angle. So she came home, and it's like, then I felt like absolute trash again because of what we talked about. Like, oh my God, she was laying on the ground in pain, and I didn't believe her. But, it's just one of those things where at first it was very traumatic, and then she started to know how much attention to realize how much attention she was getting by having this arm in a sling. And it's like, okay, now she's really starting to love the attention, and she's telling the story, and she goes to school the next day, and every single person that sees her needs to know what's wrong. So she's kind of enjoying life with a broken wing right now. So that's been the major drama going on.
I told you this story, and it's funny how you mentioned that, because I was in grade 1, and there was a kid who broke his arm and was in a cast, and he got all that attention. So it was like, hey, I want in on that. So I went home, went on the front porch, jumped off the front porch, and I realized that it's not tall enough or it's not high enough for me to break my arm. So it was just kind of like, I ended up hurting myself, but didn't do any damage. It was just a waste of time.
Well, I'm sorry you weren't able to break your arm for the purposes of getting attention.
But first off, okay, that's funny. That's cute. Thank you. I appreciate that. The second thing is, it's funny is that because I know, because you told me that there was different triage nurses when you went to the emergency. The paranoid part of me is, if that was in my shoes, if I would be like, listen, honey, I've already brought 2 kids. What if the third kid has the same person who seen us before? Then they're going to call Children's Aid, and they're going to get our kids taken away from me. I've seen so many criminal law shows that my paranoia gets the best of me.
Yeah, and I think my wife's a little bit too like that. And I was like, oh, that's another kid in there, and I'm like, I don't think Children's Service is going to show up because once every 2.5 years one of our kids shows up with needing stitches or something. It's usually when you need quite the series of bruises and breaks and stuff like that. I'm like, but I think it's been different people every time. I don't know. You can't really fake a seizure. So one of my boys, my God, that was the worst. My youngest, 11 months old, had a febrile seizure. And trust me, you look up medical conditions really fast when your kid has one, and febrile seizures is a terrifying thing. So that was I just remember it starts with just a blood curdling scream that's been burnt in my memory forever. But you definitely need to learn to research pretty quick.
Yeah, this podcast is I guess a poster boy for Planned Parenthood, because this is your future.
Yeah, right.
This is scary stuff. Like you're not kidding. Like the moment when I had my daughter, my oldest daughter, I was a helicopter parent. I would not let her go anywhere. Yeah. Without being like on top to make sure that first off, she ran like Phoebe from Friends. So that was the first thing, right? So it's like she ran that crazy, and so it was like, okay, if she's got my balance, she's gonna fall over any time now, and I just did not like that happening, and it's a 24/7 concern. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. But you do get to have some fun with them. Like you get to do some pretty wild things. Like I always joke too, like the difference between your first kid, and I have 3, so by the third one, I always joke that when your first kid comes out, you try and, even when you're doing a basic snack in the middle of the day, it's like, okay, I need a nice healthy thing for him or her to drink, and then we're going to make sure that there's some grains and some fruits and there's some proteins, and you've got this whole plate of the perfect snack time for like 10 a.m. all set to go. And then by the third kid, you're just throwing Cheerios on the ground like you're feeding chickens. So it definitely changes. And one final story, and then we can get into the football talk. But today was just a perfect example of how you can kind of like get your sensor ready here. Just absolutely mind fuck your kids and really mess with them, because my kids, all 3 of them, still really big into Santa Claus, 100% true believers. And we get that elf on the shelf, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And if you've got little kids listening, turn it off now. Spoiler alert. And so we do the elf on the shelf, and my daughter is very very attentive. She picks up things quickly, and even at 6, she's kind of questioning Santa, questioning elf on the shelf, but still wants to believe. So she put out this little tray of Swedish berries, and she counted how many were in it, and she gave them to the elf for him to snack on when he goes back to North Pole tonight. And if you don't have elf on the shelf, I don't have time to explain it. Read the book, look it up, and figure out what he does or whatever. But anyways, we went and picked up my youngest from his preschool class, and as we were coming in, both kids had to go to the washroom. But my youngest at 4 still likes you close in case, he needs his bum wiped or whatever. He just likes somebody close. But I had just enough window to get in, grab a couple of the Swedish berries, get back to the washroom before my daughter came out of the washroom. And so whatever, they're done, and then we're just kind of walking around the living room. All of a sudden, my daughter just freezes and gasps, because there were 7 Swedish berries in there when we left, and now there's only 2 Swedish berries when we came home. So I had her completely convinced that while we were gone, the elf came out of the Christmas tree where he was hiding this morning, only had time to eat 7 berries, because as she came to the conclusion on her own, he must have heard us coming home and had to stop eating the Swedish berries and get back in the tree. So she couldn't see him. So it's nice. Now she's just, if she was waffling on the idea of Christmas magic not being true, she's all the way back in now, and stuff like that. It's just, it's fun. Is it messing with their heads? Yes. But I mean, gosh, when just kids and Christmas, it's the most purest thing you'll ever see in your life.
Before we can allow kids to listen back, can you imagine the conversation if she starts listening to the show? Like a few years down the line, Dad, what's...
You son of a bitch.
All right, before we get to some CFL talk, hey, let's go through some the countries and top cities that have been listening to the Rouge Radio podcast. Here's the top countries. We got your Canada, United States, Switzerland, France, United Kingdom, Germany, Ireland, and India, followed by Bermuda and Costa Rica. Top cities: Toronto, Calgary, Winnipeg, Montreal, Quebec, East York and Brampton, Ontario, Scarborough, Ontario, and New York, New York. We're big in the Big Apple.
And can't crack Saskatchewan, apparently.
Just in front of New York is Regina, Saskatchewan.
Oh, I must have missed that. Sorry.
No. That was like New York. That was I could go on for all the cities, but Regina was just after New York.
Oh, I see. Okay, there you
go. We got more fans of us in New York than we do in the entire province of Saskatchewan. Tony, you got to start cheering for your riders. I mean, granted, your fandom only lasted one week, but. All right, let's get to some CFL talk. Hey, listen, the CFL came out with their all-decade team. Now, you kind of went through their all-decade team. Anything, because the CFL likes to do things in article format and not like actual list. This might be a little bit tough to follow. But first off, did you have any issues with who made the final cut?
Not really. I mean, it was a great decade for football, and I see something like Bo Levi Mitchell as the number 1 quarterback, and honestly, I don't know how you argue it. You might be able to make a case for somebody else, but I don't know how you look at that and say nope, that's not legitimate. And I think the lists kind of reflect what we've seen in the last decade in the Canadian Football League. Like, unfortunately for Saskatchewan, I'm surprised Twitter didn't really blow up that, out of all of the candidates, at least out of the West, if I skimmed through it, and I did find out that one was listed by player, by position, which is really nice if you need to skim through quickly. Like, no player, one, Weston Dressler was like the only first Saskatchewan Rough Rider to make the list, brought into the league by Saskatchewan and then moved around. I'm surprised Twitter wasn't more upset at that, Saskatchewan Rough Rider Twitter anyways. But, you look at the list and they're all legitimate guys. Can you make cases for people on the second All-Star team being on the first All-Star team? And it's like, yeah, probably. Like, it was actually a really strong decade for football, if you ask me. And I think it just kind of reflects it. Like, Hamilton Tiger Cats showing up a lot. You know what? In the last 4 years, they've been a very strong football club, and it's not surprising to not see a ton of, Ottawa Renegades on there. Sorry, Red Blacks on there. And it did flow. Like, it's a fun thing. So I'm not really ready to die on any hills for any players, but I think for the most part, everything was exactly right.
You know what? I just kind of have to echo those sentiments. I'm looking at the exact list right now, and I think longevity probably played a role. Mm-hmm. If you're looking based on the last couple of seasons, I think Willie Jefferson's on the first team, and and it's not saying anything bad about about who made it on the first All-Star team. I mean, Charleston Hughes definitely on there, John Bowman definitely on there, but when you consider the projection of Willie Jefferson over the whole decade, probably ekes out at least at least John Bowman. But because, he entered the league, 2014, 2015? Maybe before then, but that's when he got his big break. And he was pretty much a juggernaut in Saskatchewan. And he was literally the one reason that Winnipeg won the Grey Cup last year against Hamilton. I think I might be showing favorites, but yeah, you know what? You got your credit, so I'm not going to shed any tears.
And why not honor the longevity, right? Like you said, the players, when you look at it, who's on there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I really don't want to see someone who had a great season in 2013 or something. Like I'm not gonna kick in the door and say, why isn't Deandra Cobb on there? Because he had a great 2010 with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Like,
wait! Is this our weekly, or I guess our episodic name drop?
Yes,
Cobb.
I remembered. We gotta have our random name drop. Oh hell! I even remember tweeting out, there's going to be a lot of broken ankles in the CFL with Deandra Cobb here, and he liked the tweet and retweeted it. But seriously, like, you know what I mean? Like, sure, there's probably been a guy or two that had a fantastic individual season or something, but I mean, even like someone like Lucky Whitehead, the guy's an absolutely charismatic football player, but am I going to put him on the all-decade team already? Probably not. But I mean, if you want to sit there and scream at me that he's good enough to be fine, do it. Like it's an all-star team. You just gotta know, if you want to take someone off, you need to put someone on, or if you're going to swap that guy out, then I mean, make a strong case for it.
Yeah, and when it boils down to, nobody who didn't deserve to be on the first or second team made it.
Mm-hmm.
If there's any arguments, it's some players should be on the first as opposed to the second, but anybody who was left off, it was just cause, right?
Yeah. Come on, look at the receiving core: S.J. Green, Adarius Bowman, Weston Dressler, Emmanuel Arsenault, and Nick Lewis. Like, how do you argue against that? Like, seriously, like, how do you argue it against it? And is there guys missing? Probably. Like, are they snubs? No. But look at that list. Mm-hmm. You're telling me that's not deserving? Your other guy might be deserving, but you can look at those receiving core and say that's not right? I don't think so.
All right, we're moving on. We go to TSN's all-time Grey Cup winning team. TSN had a bracket of the best teams, and it was a vote, and of course Twitter got to it, rightfully so in my opinion, because it probably had a dynasty type team. The 1981 Edmonton Eskimos. By the way, I feel bad by referencing them to the Eskimos now that they're now referenced as the Edmonton Football Club, mm-hmm. So the Edmonton CFLers. So I apologize if there's any kind of offensive. It's just I've known them as the Edmonton Eskimos for all my life. So I'm trying as much as I possible. If I do have the slip of the tongue and do reference them as the Eskimos, it's instinct.
And you know what?
It's not offensive on my end, so I apologize for future reference.
And you've got to unprogram yourself. Like, mm-hmm. I look at something as simple as the Arizona Coyotes. I can't tell you how long I called them the Phoenix Coyotes, just because it's programming. They enter the league as the Phoenix Coyotes. That's where they are forever, and it's programming. Especially at my age, at 44 years old, it's hard to deprogram that, just to shut it off and say, boom. But I do the best I can.
You know, based on your Twitter feed, you should be calling them the Winnipeg Jets. God forbid that you can't relate them to the Atlanta Thrashers, right?
Oh my God, that
all right,
is such a trigger. That is such a trigger. You know what? It is. And here's the thing: is like, I can even acknowledge how petty my beef with the Winnipeg Jets is over their history. It is so pathetic. It is so lame. There is no point for me to get as upset as I do, or to even bring it up, because it's not my team, and really, who cares if everyone likes it? But boy, that is my trigger.
Yeah, you know, and this will be my only thing is, your point is valid, But
it's 1,000% valid. It's right.
You know what? I completely agree with you. The only aspect of that is the moment that the Phoenix, Arizona ceases to exist in their mind prior to 1996, it just kind of unvalidates that argument. Like, you look on their website, they barely make mention of Teemu Selanne. Keith Tkachuk gets barely mentioned, and it was only by virtue of him being on the team for the first 5 years. Dale Hawerchuk doesn't get referenced. Thomas Steen doesn't get referenced. Bobby Hall doesn't. I mean, Bobby Hall should not be referenced at all. But that's a topic for a different story. But
who is the franchise leader in specific categories? It's Teemu Selanne. It is Dale Hawerchuk for the Arizona Coyotes, because that is their history, period. There is no muddying the waters. There is no anything like that. If you go through Arizona Coyotes history books at who leads specific categories, those Winnipeg Jets players are part of their history. It is ingrained to them. You can't remove it because it's not painting a magical illusion of what you want your current hockey team to be to connect it to another franchise. It's why, again, when I get on this soapbox, and I'm sorry, I'm like a dog on a bone with this one, the worst thing Winnipeg ever did was name their team the Jets, because now you've created this illusion that just because you're the Jets never left. And they're still gone. And the Jets still exist in Arizona. They didn't fold. They relocated. They did not fold. They did not cease to exist. They just moved and changed their names. And that's it. But by calling your new team the Jets, it makes this illusion. And then to even worse, to talk about honoring hockey in your city by completely omitting and ignoring the only reason you have another hockey team in the city. That's where my biggest beef is.
They didn't ignore the Jets 1.0.
Absolutely.
If anything,
absolutely ignore it.
You watch the Heritage Classic. The whole reason that you just see that's like Jets 1.0 all over it.
Exactly. But whereas you look at the Jets Heritage Classic and the players skating around playing the Flames alumni is Hawerchuk. It's all old Winnipeg Jets. Like, no, your Heritage Classic team is Byron Dafoe and Ilya Kovalchuk and Danny Heatley, and that is if you look at the Winnipeg Jets history books, your franchise leaders are not Dale Hawerchuk. They are Danny Heatley. They are Ilya Kovalchuk. This modern day Winnipeg Jets, your franchise leader in goals and games played, Ilya Kovalchuk, Danny Heatley, Byron Dafoe.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, if we're going to be that petty, do you really think the no? I'm sorry. Petty is the wrong term.
If I'm going to be that logical, then yes, that's how logical it is.
Petty is the wrong term, and I'm going to swing this back on track very quickly. Petty is the wrong term. But if you think the NHL will allow an alumni game of Flames alumni of Lanny McDonald or whoever played, what have you, versus guys, because Ilya Kovalchuk was still playing at this time, of Danny Heatley and whoever the Atlanta Thrashers had, they would not, because that organization sucked. Like that game, there would be zero viewers, other than
the St. Louis Blues had Martin Brodeur in their alumni game. Like that's not an excuse.
He's St. Louis's favorite son.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. Let's
it's a trigger for me. I'm sorry, it's a trigger.
I can't even remember how we even got there. Anyway, the 1981 Edmonton Eskimos, or the Edmonton Football Club. That's how we got off the track there. The Edmonton Football Club, the 1981 version, was voted the best CFL Grey Cup team of all time. Now, in recent memory, I can't remember who else within the Berkshire. I think the 2012 Toronto Argonauts were involved. I could be wrong. The 1996 Toronto Argonauts as well. But And in your opinion, I don't know how long.
Oh, you want to know all the teams that were in the bracket?
Oh, I just wanted to know, is in your opinion, did they get it right? Because there are some people that thought that even the brackets were omitting some teams, and we'll get on that because first off, yay or nay, the 1981 Edmonton Football Club, best Grey Cup team of all time.
Oh, because it's tough. It's hard to say no. Like, they were a great football team. 1-1 in the regular season, blah, blah, blah. Look at all their regular season stats. But it was the greatest Grey Cup team ever. So it's like, it was a great football team that won the Grey Cup. So, yes, they were, I guess from that standpoint, they were the greatest regular season team to win a Grey Cup. I guess my almost problem is I'm overthinking the question and breaking it down too much because I apologize, excuse me. I break it down too much because 1-1, but the Ottawa Rough Riders team they beat were 5-11 on the season, and they only beat them by a handful of points, like just a couple points. So, does the greatest Grey Cup team in the history of the CFL beat a 5-11 team by 3 points or whatever it was? Like,
yeah, that's a fair, you
know,
that's a fair
and then
point.
you look at but there's a couple teams on there. Like, I mean, the third place team was the '97 Argonauts. Yeah, but you annihilated the Saskatchewan Roughriders, like just absolutely annihilated them. Does that mean they are great because they went up against an upstart Riders team that upset his way essentially through the Grey Cup? And I mean, I think it was either the West semifinal or against Calgary, which is ridiculous ending to that football game. But anyways. They weren't the best Saskatchewan Roughriders team, but at least the Argonauts went out and just, absolutely destroyed them, right? And I'd be full of crap if I knew anything about the 1948 Calgary Stampeders. I don't know if that makes me a horrible fan, but I mean, the 2009 Alouettes, I mean, that was a pretty damn good football team. They, like, that whole fourth quarter, people always think about the 13th man as being the death blow of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, which for all intents and purposes at the most important time it was. But Saskatchewan also pooped the bed in the fourth, like 18 points in the fourth quarter Saskatchewan gave up. And was that Saskatchewan? Was that Montreal? How good Montreal was? So I feel like my brain wants to overthink the term greatest Grey Cup team. Was it the greatest Grey Cup team on that one afternoon in 60 minutes of football? Then maybe I wouldn't pick the 81 Eskimos. But was it the greatest football team to win a Grey Cup was the 81 Eskimos? Then yes, I think that's the right pick. If I know it sounds like I'm kind of sitting on the fence on this one, but like I said, my brain is putting too much thought into the question maybe.
All right, before we get into the reason for this question, greatest team, off the top of your head, greatest team to not win the Grey Cup.
Oh, what is it, 2017 Stampeders that lost to the Argonauts. Oh, come on.
I knew it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you brought that up because that plays into one of the topics later on. But you know what, to be honest with you, I like that idea. For me, top five, the 2001 Bombers. 14-4, 12-game winning streak. The only reason that you lost the last two games is because you rested your starters. You host Hamilton. You go in. You're confident. You're facing a team 8-10 until you realize that's coached by Wally Buono. They got beat, but I mean, to be honest, a 14-4 team, you would think that you would win the Grey Cup. Mm-hmm. But that's just my vote. I think.
2001, right? That's the one with. God, I can't remember the Stampeders quarterback's name.
That's how bad they were.
I know, right?
You can't remember A, Marcus Crandall, and that's B, right. Freaking Ben Sankey. Which
made it worse is the Stampeders only got there because Ben Sankey. And then, honestly, not a lot of people might remember that. At least that's how I remember it. Maybe I've lost my memory over there. But I only remember that is that Ben Sankey was the better quarterback that season, actually got them to the Grey Cup with a great regular season showing. Well, not a great one, but a good enough regular season showing.
From my recollection, you are correct. I think statistically Ben Sankey was the better quarterback, but Marcus Crandall got the W's. I think that was the reason why they gave way to him throughout the latter stages of the season. And I'm not. We don't talk about that on this podcast anymore.
But that Aldine Henry,
the punt block. Yeah, the punt block. Oh my God, yeah. We're not talking about it.
Canadian. I think that's the only thing they used to base the Canadian player of the game on was his one play. Anyways, because he won Canadian, I think, for that one, Henry?
I'd have to Google that, and I'll maybe Google that while we talk about this following thing. Our favorite person on Twitter, Ron Peterson, on his Facebook show, says, "It is a shame that the 2013 Saskatchewan Roughriders were not part of the bracket for the CFL's all-time best Grey Cup winning team." I'll Google the whole 2001 thing. You give your opinion on that subject alone.
And again, I don't know the complete context of what Rod Peterson how he wanted to state his case that the 2013 Saskatchewan Roughriders were the best Grey Cup team. Is it because they won at home? Is that what it is? Saskatchewan playing in Regina? Is that the premise of how you want to determine that they were the greatest football team or greatest Grey Cup champion there was? Because, they were an 11-7 regular season team, which, yes, you're over 500. 11-7 is pretty good, but you were second place. The Stampeders had 14 wins. You had 11, and BC had the exact same record as you. You got the second seed on a tiebreaker, not because you ran away for the West, so you clearly weren't the best team in the league that year. So, without hearing his complete argument, I'd have to sit down and hear it, but just based on that you had you blew out the Tiger Cats at home, makes you the greatest Grey Cup team or deserving to be in the bracket. I don't see it on face value, but if someone listens to this podcast and wants to tweet me or whatever, I am open. I'm not saying that they're a bad choice. I just don't really see how they would be snubbed in any way when you were the second seed only on a tiebreaker. You had the same record as the BC Lions. So, I don't see it, but I guess I'm willing to listen to the argument.
And he'll listen because he's one of the biggest Rider fans in the history of Rider fans, at least.
Oh, trust me, if anyone wants to force them in there, it's me.
Listen, I give all credit to that team. That team was good. That team was scary good. But they had holes in the secondary. And let's not forget that they went on a 5-game losing streak that year, which started by losing to a team that was assembled by Joe freaking Mack. Okay? Let's not forget this. This is key. If you're one of the best Grey Cup winning, I don't even think that 8-10 Calgary Stampeder team would lose to a team that was assembled by Joe Mack. Let's not forget that, okay? All right. By the way, I Googled it. Aldie Henry was the most outstanding Canadian, and Marcus Crandall was the game's MVP.
There you go.
All right. So one second thing. I mentioned that the holes in the secondary. You could debate me as to whether or not you want to agree with me on that one. I would put the 2019 Winnipeg Blue Bombers ahead of that team. The Bombers, and this might be my homerism showing, did not have any holes on that team. Yeah, they didn't have the best players at each position. Willie Jefferson, Big Hill, that offensive line, Andrew Harris, the name goes on and on. But there were other teams that had other players that had better stats than them. That doesn't make them, because they didn't have holes, did not make them the best team to win the Grey Cup. I'm just using that as them being better than the 2013 Saskatchewan Roughriders, and therefore there's your argument. That invalidates your argument for that team. Just right there. And the fact that they lost to a team assembled by Joe Mack. All right?
Is this about the Riders or Joe Mack?
I've got serious PTSD from Joe Mack.
There you go.
All right, so let's move on. Unless you got anything else to add on, let's get on to this. This one, the CFL had played a lot of old games back when they were trying to feverishly try to get us into CFL. Get us back into CFL, fandom, right? Because we didn't know if there was going to be a season or not. One game that they had was the playoff run by the Toronto Argonauts, and which is okay. The Argonauts beat the Riders. The Argonauts beat the Calgary Stampeders. You made mention of the best team to not win a game.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, and I wanted to talk about this because when we were thinking about doing a podcast back in June, because there were a couple of Argonaut players that took to Twitter saying, it's a shame that we didn't keep that team together because we would have guaranteed that we would have repeated it back in 2018.
No.
I'm glad you took the first shot. Feel free to comment further.
No, that was not a great football team at all, and they would have to be totally over-evaluating what happened in that Grey Cup game because they were absolutely. And honestly, if you pulled up the episode of this show we did after that Grey Cup, I'm probably saying word for word what I said back then. It was just absolutely domination by the Calgary Stampeders, and 2 plays cost the Stampeders that Grey Cup, period. That was it. It was 2 plays that cost the Stampeders that entire Grey Cup. And I remember, as clear as day, turning on the TV, getting ready for football coverage for the day, and seeing the snow. And I thought, oh, crap. The great equalizer, snow. That was the only thing that was going to stop the Stampeders that day, and it did. But honestly, no, that was not a good Argonauts team. They weren't even the second best football team in that game that day. That was playing football on that. They could not. They would have never repeated, even if they had kept that team together, because they were not a good football team. And again, I'm surprised I don't have more nightmares and wake up sweating, remembering about how superior the Stampeders were during that entire football game. And it just came down to 2 screw-ups that cost everything. And it was the biggest thing why I was able to take the loss to the Red Blacks better, because the Red Blacks came out and they were a better football team than the Stampeders. And the Stampeders still marched back and sent that game to overtime, and the Red Blacks won it fair and square. There is no complaining on my end. But that Argonauts loss, that will, till the day I die, it'll probably be the last breath I take will be damn turnovers, and that will be it, But no, there's no way that 2017 team was good enough to repeat.
Let's not forget the constant bus driving that Markway McDaniel drove over his players. Or no, he just threw them under the bus. That's what it is. Okay. I'm looking over the stats of that season, 2017 season, and I was kind of on Team Tony. And then I looked at the stats and was like, well, Ricky Ray's number 2 in passing.
It's Ricky Ray. Ricky Ray here. I'm going to interrupt you here real quick, because that's what Ricky Ray did. Ricky Ray could pass for 5,000 yards in a game and only have a touchdown and 2 field goals. And people are going to be like, how dare you? How dare you say that about Ricky Ray? He is a god. And you know what? I'm not saying Ricky Ray doesn't deserve the accolades, but seriously, Ricky Ray could throw for 5,000, 6,000 yards in a football game, and then you'll look at the box score, and it'll be like a touchdown and 2 field goals, or 2 touchdowns. And you'll be like, how in the hell did he throw for 5,000 yards and only get 2 touchdowns?
All right, so aside from that, James Wilder Jr., top 6 in rushing, not bad. S.J. Green, top 2 receiving. Bear Woods, top 6 in tackles. I was trying to think. Cassius Vaughn, the guy who actually took the fumble return for the touchdown, top 3 in interceptions, and Liam Haralahu was top 3 in field goal and convert. So the stats back up that the Toronto Argonauts were a pretty good team. So I'm going to not say that they weren't a good team. I mean, I agree with you that Calgary should have won that game. I guess the question is that whether or not Toronto deserved to win that team or that game, but whether or not that they would have repeated in 2018, and by virtue of that, you would have to take into consideration as to, okay, well, Ricky Ray didn't even play the entire 2018 season. So you take that out of consideration. James Wilder Jr. was almost like a one and done because his numbers went down in the toilet. S.J. Green was S.J. Green. I can't remember who was leading them in 2018 as far as defense goes, but you take that against the Calgary Stampeders in 2018. No disrespect to Trevor Harris and the Ottawa Red Blacks. I agree with you. There's no way that the Toronto Argonauts repeat that year. There's just no way. I mean, we could talk until the cows come home as to whether or not they should have won that game in 2017 to begin with, but I say you have to be a very, very special group of talented players on one team from the bottom down to be able to repeat in a SMS era league. And Calgary's proven that they can't even do it. They can show up to the Grey Cup 5 years in a row, or I guess 4, whatever.
Yeah, 4 out of 5 or something.
Yeah. But they've only won 2 of those 5. Mm-hmm. So it's really tough. It is tough to repeat. And to say that you would have is just I don't want to say it's a disrespect, but it's just really undervaluing the other teams in the CFL. Completely undervaluing. And I think they even missed the playoffs that year. I could be wrong. I'll have to double check that. Yeah, they did. They missed the playoffs. They missed the playoffs altogether. That's not a team that you could say that you could repeat. Not a good team. All right, so what do we got next on the itinerary? All right, let's get to some emails and tweets. We got one through Twitter, and this one's directed. I'm assuming this is an electrical question. I don't know. I don't know if you saw this, Tony, but question is from at Stadnik. Does Tony prefer 3-point saddles or 4-point saddles when running EMT?
I say fuck them both. We don't do that. I probably shouldn't use swear. 3-point, I would do anything in my power to avoid either a 3-point or a 4-point saddle. They're garbage, and I would run my conduit somewhere else to avoid having to do any kind of saddle whatsoever. Saddles are the worst. But if he needs an answer, probably a 4-point saddle, because then I would just do 2 offsets, 2 like box offsets, 2 offsets on the ends of pipes and put them together and not even do a 4-point saddle.
Okay.
But either way, you shouldn't even be using saddles, mister.
All right. Follow up from Michael Dennis at Proto Dennis on Twitter. Does he prefer outlet grounds up or down? Does he align the screws on wall plates vertically, horizontally, or not at all? Again,
wall plates up and down. Wall plates up and down all the time.
Okay. This is like foreign to me.
Yeah. I mean, got to be aesthetically pleasing. They all have to be the same way up or down.
All right.
And I forget what the other thing was. The ground. What was the one? The ground.
Does he prefer outlet grounds up or down? Does he align the screws on wall plates vertically, horizontally, or not at all?
Outlet grounds. Who cares? Outlet grounds.
All right. Susie from Boissevain, Manitoba, with an email. Dalts, whatever happened with your what will Dalts do for a Grey Cup? The Bombers win the Grey Cup and you don't do anything. What's up with that? We stopped doing it this year because we weren't getting any quality submissions.
No.
The last
one,
like
drinking a Slurpee in the cold. Oh God!
Yeah. Someone said,
how many thousands of Canadians do that every day?
Yeah. Someone said, go into the downtown Winnipeg and drink a Slurpee.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the other 40,000 people doing that?
Listen, like when we first came out, there was some pretty decent suggestions, and it was like, and then as the time, it's like people just gave up.
Yeah.
Hey, wear a shirt. Okay.
Yeah. Walk around with your shoelace untied for an hour. What?
Okay. Graham from Brandon. Dalts, do you think do you think Andrew Harris's we have to go through the typo here. Is Andrew Harris's performance in the 107th Grey Cup diminished by his positive test for PEDs.
Oh. We're going heavy here. That's a heavy question. Which I think we've covered in the past, but you go ahead.
Oh, we did. And by no means is this a defense of Andrew Harris. I think whatever, he's going to do him as far as his explanation. I think all athletes should be 100% responsible for what they take in their body, whether or not they if you don't know, don't take it. Right? If you're not 100% confident in what you're putting in your body, don't take it. That's my rule. And welcome to my TED Talk. Now, having said that, Andrew Harris has been in the league for what, 11 years, 10 years? A long time.
Yeah.
I don't know the frequency of him being tested. I'm assuming he's tested on a regular basis. I don't know enough about the PEDs that that they found traces amount of in his system. How long did they last? I'm assuming that he did. If he didn't take anything further, that they would have been out of his body by Grey Cup. So, long answer to make anything short here, no. His Grey Cup performance in last November should not be diminished. There definitely is going to be an asterisk on his career because of it. I mean, that's a topic for another show as to whether or not should we ignore the other 9 years based on possible 4 or 5 games where he might have had this in his system, and whether or not, I mean, I don't know too much about PEDs to really comment further, and I'm really not going to comment anything further on that itself. But to get back to the question at hand is, no, I don't think anything, his performance should not be diminished based on that. It was a one-man wrecking crew, yeah, and we can say, well, I mean, yeah, he was on the juice again. And it's like, well, okay, I think we would have heard something by now. I definitely think we would have heard something by now. It's just Winnipeg was the better team. They were just well prepared, and he just had a chip on his shoulder. I think that's all there is to it. So,
yeah, and I don't think it diminishes the win by the Bombers at all either as a whole. Like it's obviously something overshadowed, but I mean that they just played that game, and my God, there wasn't a Winnipeg Blue Bomber that didn't carry his weight and do what he's supposed to do and be where he's supposed to be. It's like I tweeted out too. It's like it wasn't a great game, but what made it so memorable was how Winnipeg just absolutely denied the Tiger Cats everything. It was just that's what blew me away.
Oh yeah, I mean we were talking about the Western semifinal. I hate to bring this up.
No, you don't.
We were talking about, obviously, we go back to the simultaneous catch, right? Like that whole shabacle. Mike Jones. Yeah. Mike Jones had that play. Nobody knew who Mike Jones was. And then 2 weeks later, Mike Jones has probably his best game of his career. Had a couple of tackles and an interception to seal the deal to close out that game. That was just, like, you couldn't have said it better yourself. There was not one player that didn't show up to play. Like,
if I have one, the only beef I could have about that game from the Winnipeg side is that it was the crap, and I totally forgot his name. Nick Dembski. It was like the only thing that I thought was like he got snubbed. Like Andrew Harris, I don't know if he could have completely had the day he had if it hadn't been for Nick Dembski being an equally scary threat out of the backfield as well. Like I think my only beef about that is Dembski should have got Canadian and Harris got MVP.
Well, see, that's a slippery slope too, right? And I'm willing to bet they probably. But how do you get a Canadian to win the MOP or the MVP, but he's not the most outstanding Canadian?
But to me, it splits it up, right? Like I do get that argument. How can the MVP not be the most outstanding Canadian on top of it? I do get that argument, but I mean, yeah, it's that whole how does a giving a Hart Trophy to a defenseman, right? Because they have the Norris. Like I similar compared. I get it. To me it felt forced. To me it felt after kind of what happened to Andrew Harris, it felt a little bit you're trying too hard by giving them both. But you're right. How do you give a Canadian an MVP and then not say he wasn't the most outstanding Canadian on top of it?
Yeah. Way to cower to my arguments there.
Well,
you were just like, hey, this is my point.
I understand the flaw with my argument, but because of both being Canadian, but whatever.
All right, so we've been talking for at least close to an hour, and this is.
Did we say anything?
We did not talk about any CFL games. Like, how does that happen? How does that happen?
There's 2 rants at least, 2 completely unnecessary rants in there, I think, on my part. But
they weren't unnecessary. They weren't unnecessary. No. Well, that'll do it for episode 405. You can follow us on Twitter. Myself at Rouge Radio. Or I guess not myself. Our podcast at Rouge Radio. Myself is at Rouge Dalts. Tony is located at Tony Rouge. You can email us at thenewrouge@gmail.com. And, of course, we're putting up lots of content on our YouTube page. Trade trees. I'm obsessed with trade trees. I have put up lots of content on our YouTube page and getting some pretty good feedback. I even got a comment from Vernon Adams.
Ooh.
Because he loved it. I'm just going to put that in my back pocket there. I'm just going to talk about that forever.
Yeah.
Tony, any final thoughts before we end the show on a dad joke?
Yeah, because there's no football going on. I feel like this can just open up the floor, and I've seen this popping up, and it makes me lose faith in humanity, or it just means I'm old and this information is out of the loop. But recently, all I'm saying is I've never seen the show Schitt's Creek. But obviously, I know all the Canadian stars. Yeah, I know all the characters in the show. So, Canadian icon of acting, SCTV legend, Catherine O'Hara is in this show with Eugene Levy and Eugene Levy's son. And I have more than I feel necessary seeing people saying, I didn't know that whatever her character's name is in Schitt's Creek is also the mom from Home Alone. And now they've also figured out she was in Beetlejuice. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that's the same person. And I just are you people all fucked in the head? How could you not know this? How did you not know Catherine O'Hara is in these movies? And to me, it's not even about age. You'd be like, well, a lot of these people were too young or weren't alive when Home Alone came. Like, that's got nothing to do with the fact that you should know a little bit about one of the most amazing women actors in the history of our country. And you don't know what movie she's in. You only know her for Schitt's Creek. Come on, people. Canada, be better than that.
Here's another thing, and I was gonna rant about that. It's one thing if you're an actor or an actress and you started at, I don't know, age 7 or 8, right? Because your looks kind of change. You don't look the same as a 7 or 8-year-old when you do as a teenager.
Yeah.
All right? Or even in your early 20s. Catherine O'Hara, when she was in Home Alone, I would, what, in her 30s?
Sure.
That's a guess. All right, so she's in her 60s now. She's not going to look that different. Gray hair, maybe. And she's got gray hair and more wrinkles.
And she's Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah.
Like, did you not know that Harrison Ford was in Star Wars and Indiana Jones? Like, if you see Harrison Ford now, would you say, oh my God, I think that guy was in Star Wars? I'm not positive, but he might have actually been in Star Wars. No. Like, that actor should be known for what they do. And to me, it's flabbergasted that people could not know that.
Well, I'm just trying to think of other actors like Bill Murray and Ghostbusters and whatever he's in now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like any random streaming show. Like all the streaming networks now have major movie stars in their 8-episode television series.
All right, let's stop talking about TV. Let's get to this week's dad joke. Tony, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, let's get up to this week's dad joke here. How do you get a country girl's attention?
How?
A tractor.
Double entendre. You're the king of the dad jokes. What did you think of my Christmas tree one?
Oh,
the BL tree?
Oh, was that whether you were talking with your daughter?
No, the dad joke I put on Facebook there. If you put a bacon ornament and a lettuce ornament on your Christmas tree, is it a BL tree?
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, I'll give you a couple. I'll give you a golf clap on that one.
Yeah.
I'll give you a golf clap on that one.
There you go.
If you're really into dad jokes, which, it's 2020 and you should be, follow up on Twitter at the Dad Joke Crew, #Dad Joke Crew, and you'll get tired of it pretty quickly. I can tell you that much.
There you go.
That'll wrap it up for episode 405. We may come out with another show by the end of the year, just to see 2020 out. Make sure.
Whoa, slow down. That's a lot of shows.
This is our third show of the year. One show for every 5 months. That's our quota.
There you go.
All right, that'll wrap it up. I'm Dalts. That's Tony, and we are out of time. And we'll see you whenever. Take care.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.